Hey everybody, this week you're going to start learning about how to use research databases because we are almost at the point in the semester where you have to start writing your research papers and doing your projects. So today we're going to focus on databases and get you through that part because databases are pretty much the best thing that ever happened to education. So we're going to start off by looking at what research databases actually are, and then we'll talk about how you use them and what to do with them. So the first thing we're going to look at is what they are and what they aren't. The first section here covers research databases. They're basically just collections of data. So it's a bunch of articles or a bunch of pictures or a bunch of whatever source you need put together in a collection that's easily managed, easily searched, and think of them like storage buildings. I like this analogy because if you go into a storage facility, you see these long rows of individual garages where people just house all their junk, right? Well, think about databases kind of like that. Long rows of virtual garages where certain collections are held. You can also think of it like a museum, where if you go to the museum, certain parts of the museum have certain kinds of art. If you want to see sculpture, you go to one room of the museum, or if you want to see a specific era or style of painting, you go to another room in the museum. So it kind of works like that. Research databases are not Google. Google is a search engine. So is Bing or whatever other search engines you use. Google just uses the same kind of search format, but it will search the entire internet for whatever your keywords are, where databases will search a specific collection. Research databases are not difficult to use. They're super easy, and last but not least, they are super reliable. So you don't have to worry about whether the information you're getting is good or if it's going to get you in trouble. So why do we use them? I get these questions all the time from my students who just want to go to the internet and Google stuff. Believe me, I love Wikipedia just as much as everybody. If I want a quick answer to something, yes, I will Google it, and yes, I will use Wikipedia. However, it doesn't work that way when you're doing academic research. If somebody finds out that you wrote an academic paper and you just Googled all your sources, they're going to laugh at you. So the other thing is, just like I say here, you can Google anything you want, but you really don't want to spend the rest of your life searching through all those results, because if you Google something, it's going to take you forever to go through all those results. I usually have at least one student who is aware of Google Scholar. First of all, let me say that Google Scholar is wonderful. I love it, but it has its limitations. It's still going to return a ton of hits, and you can't always trust the stuff it returns. The other thing is the sources you get aren't always free, and sometimes they can be pretty expensive. So one time I was using Google Scholar in class to show my students how Google Scholar worked and why databases were better. And one of the sources we pulled up was like $50 for an hour's worth of use. That's ridiculous. We found the exact same source on a library database for free. So it's a good thing to use databases instead of Google Scholar because you don't have to pay for this stuff. If for no other reason than just you don't have to pay for this stuff. All right, so databases also give you the option of using peer-reviewed information. And peer-reviewed information, like I say here, is the gold standard of information. It is the highest quality information that exists on the planet. And it is actually really hard to produce. The gold standard of information basically just means it's the best thing you can get. When we peer review things, let me give you an example. Let's say that I wrote an article on Hamlet. I want it to be peer reviewed so I can get it published in one of these super prestigious journals like Atlantic Monthly or something. And I send my article into their peer review process. And a lot of times the peer review process takes a long time, months to get through, which is a problem if you're in the science or technology fields, because sometimes by the time your peer review comes through, whatever your paper was about has already changed. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Sorry. So the first thing I've got listed here is that peer-reviewed information is reviewed by a panel of experts, not just one person. So they get a bunch of people, and a lot of times I've seen panels as small as 3, but usually it's like 8 or 10 people, and they have a consensus. They have to all read the article, and they all have to come to a consensus that, yes, this is high quality, this is accurate, this is reliable, or it's not, which means peer-reviewed information can't be published by just anyone. It has to be published by someone who is a recognized, or at least has done work in the field before, scholar who has done work in the field before. All right, so Grayson's Library. These are the instructions you need to get into Grayson's Library, into their databases, and I'm going to show you how to do this in just a second. You'll click on Virtual Resources. You'll find the database that will be most helpful to you, and then I've got a couple of things underneath here. The A to Z list if you already know what database you want to play with, or the subject list if you aren't sure. And then you just start your research. Okay, advanced search options. This is the best thing about databases because you can focus your research. It's super important to be able to do that because nobody has time to search through thousands of hits to find the thing they want. So always, always, always use the advanced search option when you can. The first thing you'll do is type in the search terms if you want to look for something specific. If you have the author's name, that's usually the best way to start. But a lot of times we don't know who we're looking for. You know, like if you're like me, if I'm a PhD student, I know which scholars I'm looking for because it's the same scholars all the time writing about my subject. But if this is fairly new to you, then you may not know who you're looking for. So you don't have to do the author's name, but you do need to know words that are directly related to the subject you're researching. For instance, if I'm writing my research paper on homelessness and veterans, I would want to make sure that the search terms I typed into the box included homelessness and veterans. Be sure to check the box for the type of source you want. That means if you don't want reviews, which you don't, trust me, because those are not sources, they're just reviews of sources. If you don't want brochures, if you don't want books, then you don't want to check those boxes. You want to make sure you check the box of the type of source you want. So if you're looking for journal articles or something of that nature, you want to make sure you check the box next to that. Be sure you check the box for full text sources. A lot of my students in the past have tried to use abstracts instead of the full text source, and there's a problem with that. Abstracts are just summaries. So you're not going to be able to pull out any meaningful quotes. All you're going to do is get an overview of what the article is about, and that's not enough to make your source useful to you. So make sure you're looking at full text sources. If you want to check the box for peer-reviewed sources and see what you get, that's usually a good idea. You might not always get a lot of hits, though, because, like I said, peer-reviewed information is like the best of the best, and that also means it's a little bit less common than other types of information. So if you click the peer-reviewed source box and you don't get enough returns, then just go back and unclick it and it'll give you lots more stuff. You still get good stuff if it's not peer-reviewed, but if you can use peer-reviewed, then there is absolutely nobody who can question your decision to do that. All right, then if you want to set your date ranges, you can. I usually don't because I'm usually writing about literature, and scholarship about literature is always relevant. If you're writing a story about, or not a story, but a paper about science or technology, then you probably want a date range because anything that's over a year or two old has already become obsolete in most cases. So hopefully that helps you get through the basics of databases and why they matter. And once we get into the next video, I'll show you what this process looks like.